My entitled uncle tries to steal all of the estate money that was meant to go to my father who passed away, but now was required to go to me and my siblings instead. And after dealing with his petty lies and all the garbage he was throwing our way, just so he could try and keep the over $150,000 in estate money, my uncle thankfully lost, forcing him to split up the money between himself and my siblings. Here's what happened. So first of all the names and identities have been changed just to protect myself from additional drama. If you like a good mess around and found out kind of story, then you're gonna love this one. The cast of characters are Dad, Uncle, and Granddad. A few years ago, Granddad passed away in a rehab facility as a result of gross negligence. My dad and my uncle opened a lawsuit on behalf of my granddad's estate. It drags on and it looks like it's going nowhere, and then 2 years ago, my dad passed away a couple of months after a cancer diagnosis. It was all of a sudden, and my uncle had promised him his kids were now his. He said that he would look out for us. I was the executor of my dad's estate, and I did the usual business of selling property, closing accounts, and all that stuff. Since my uncle was the executor for my granddad's estate, I asked him if it was still open and what the lawsuit's status was. My uncle said the lawsuit went nowhere and the estate was closed. And this is where I made a mistake because I took him at his word. My dad's estate was settled and closed last winter. My siblings and I split everything according to the will, and life continued. In April, my uncle called me to tell me he wanted to gift my siblings and me a small amount of money. The lawsuit on behalf of Granddad was paying out, and my uncle wanted to give us $10,000 to split. Then he told me my dad's estate needed to be reopened to claim it. There were so many red flags you would think the circus was in town. I played nice and I thanked him, and then immediately called the courthouse where my granddad and dad's estate were established. The clerk told me not only was Granddad's estate still open, but there was also a large bond on a sum of money recently placed. They then asked me if I wanted the name of the lawyer on file, and I said yes, absolutely. So I called the lawyer, and the receptionist exclaimed that they were trying to find my contact information. The lawyer gets on the line, and as one of the beneficiaries, he's able to fill me in on everything. Right after my dad was diagnosed, the lawsuit for my granddad was settled. My dad passed away without knowing the rehab admitted their part in causing his father to pass away as well, so they ended up paying out a settlement. This money sat in limbo for 18 months through the funeral and the sale of the properties. The first business day after my dad's estate closed, my uncle petitioned for the release of funds as the sole beneficiary. Well, the estate lawyer discovered that my uncle was not the sole beneficiary and requested my contact information, which my uncle claimed he did not have. The lawyer tells him that my siblings and myself were still his beneficiaries even though my dad's estate closed. We were entitled to my father's share. And this is when my uncle called me with this tall tale of wanting to gift us a small amount. The total sum of the lawsuit after taxes and the lawyer's fees was around $150,000. Since my dad and uncle were the sole beneficiaries of my granddad's estate, they would each get half. Guys, I was furious. I called the siblings and we agreed to play it cool. The lawyer for granddad's estate knew my uncle was being shady and never intended to split the money, so he refused to release the funds to granddad's estate, so the checks would go to my uncle and dad's estate directly. I decided to bide my time with my uncle and not reveal the extent of what I knew. 2 more months go by, and the estate is reopened and the bank account is established. And this is right when my uncle finds out through the lawyer that the funds would not be given to the uncle to disperse, but would go directly to the beneficiaries. Well, my uncle calls me spitting mad, saying that he did all the legwork of getting the lawsuit done and deserved the payment. He felt giving us $10,000 was fair, but I told him that the courts had a system for that sort of thing, and he would get his hours and time through the lawyers. My uncle went into a rant that dad owed him money, and that he was gonna bill us for so many hours, and we would get less than $10,000 if we didn't agree to the 10. So I told him to go ahead and try. Well, as you might be guessing, my uncle did try. My granddad's estate lawyer wouldn't say how many versions of the application he rejected before they arrived at an acceptable rate the judge would agree to. My uncle wanted us to pay for a grave plot since my dad passed away first and took the last plot in the family graveyard. He wanted repayment for all sorts of things that had nothing to do with my granddad's estate. This poor estate lawyer had to try and beat estate laws and inheritance into my uncle's head, but my uncle was determined to take both of his shares and my dad's. He would say, "I'm the executor and they don't deserve a thing." My siblings and I accepted the first reasonable rate and walked away with half of the remaining balance. My uncle never realized the sum would come off the top, not deducted from my dad's share alone. Despite the paper trail of deception he left, he still feels he's the victim and that we stole from him. He said to us, "The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. It comes from your friends and loved ones." And honestly, I'm just so glad we finally got this resolved. Wow, your uncle was really trying to mess you and your siblings over. That must have been so upsetting, and I'm honestly really sorry you went through that. It's bad enough your granddad and your father passed away, but now your uncle's literally trying to take all the money and be like, "No, it's mine. I'm gonna keep it." He didn't care about laws or anything like that. No joke, your uncle was determined to take everything away from you guys. And it's also really insulting for him to be like, "Oh, here's $10,000. You can split it amongst your siblings." It's dude, are you kidding? That's definitely not how this is gonna work. So overall, I'm really glad you got that worked out, because I'm sure this was a nightmare to deal with, and the way your uncle was acting definitely was not helping the situation. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled assistant school principal demands that all of the teachers turn in their lesson plans for the next week every single week. So I decided to maliciously comply, which eventually led to my assistant principal's life being absolutely miserable, with me eventually getting off the hook. Here's what happened. So once upon a time in the quaint town of AmITheA, a new middle school assistant principal was placed at our school. One day, trying to impress the school principal, our assistant, Mr. Sternworth, as we will call him, decided to crack down on the teacher's lesson planning process. Mr. Sternworth, a stern man with a penchant for punctuality, issued a decree that all teachers must submit their lesson plans detailed on the form he provided, which also took way longer due to formatting and other demands, and he wanted them promptly every Monday at 8 o'clock for the upcoming week. The teachers grumbled and complained, as this takes a lot of time we could be prepping for the lesson, but we had little choice but to comply to Mr. Sternworth's wishes. But I, however, saw an opportunity for a little bit of mischief. Determined to make a point, I not only submitted the lesson plans diligently every Monday at the specified time, but I decided to take it a step further. Along with each lesson plan, I attached a friendly email politely requesting feedback on the plans and any suggestions he has for improvement. The email would say the following: "Dear Mr. Sternworth, I hope this email finds you well. Attached are my lesson plans for the upcoming week. I would greatly appreciate any feedback or suggestions you might have. Thank you for your time." Now, at first, Mr. Sternworth was pleased to see such diligence from me. However, as the weeks went by, the inbox of the assistant principal began to overflow with my meticulously detailed lesson plans, as well as my polite follow-up emails. It seemed that every lesson plan submission was accompanied by a prompt for feedback. Now, at first, Mr. Sternworth tried to keep up. He skimmed through a few lesson plans offering generic feedback, saying stuff like, "Oh, it looks good," or "keep it up." But I was persistent. I pushed for more feedback. The flood of emails requesting feedback became overwhelming, and Mr. Sternworth found himself spending more time responding to me than actually performing his administrative duties. Frustrated and desperate to put an end to the constant barrage of emails, Mr. Sternworth called me into his office. With a weary sigh, he said to me, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I simply don't have the time to provide detailed feedback on every lesson plan. Can't you submit them without all the extra emails?" Smirking, I replied by saying, "Sorry, sir. I'm just a guy who wants to get better. I'm trying to make lesson plans that are engaging, and I really need the feedback. I'd hate to get docked on my end-of-the-year evaluation for being anything but the best." After a heavy sigh, Mr. Sternworth said, "Well, if you stop emailing me about them, I won't make you turn in any more. It is obvious that you are a good teacher and I need to focus on other things." Well, fast forward, and that was 12 years ago, and I haven't turned in a lesson plan ever since. That's a really sneaky and funny way to get out of something that seems really mundane. Teachers are already super underpaid and undervalued, but on top of that, they're also really busy during the school year. So for the principal to be like, "Oh yeah, we need all of your lesson plans before the next week," that just seems a little bit too much in my opinion. So I think this is a really funny and sneaky way to basically get out of having to do this, and it's really cool to see that 12 years later you still have not had to turn in a lesson plan. My entitled sister was able to get me to fund her Christmas dinner with her kids, as well as several other things in her life. And at this point, I'm so frustrated and disappointed, I seriously now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So honestly, this is more of a vent than anything else, but this just happened yesterday and I'm still pretty irritated with the whole situation. When it comes to my sister, I have many stories about her entitlement. I've got one where she married a man for their health insurance for a surgery and then divorced divorced a few months after the surgery. Once she even got mad she wasn't invited to someone else's vacation, and when that person finally broke down and invited her, she got even more mad because they wanted her to pay for herself. Now that one really ticked me off because she brought my name into it. But currently she's been doing without a job for 3 years and lives off of her boyfriend and her adult children. In November, she told me my nieces and nephews were going to spend Christmas with their dad's side of the family, so she was trying to plan a day for her to go stay the night with her daughter and do a small dinner. She invited me to go, and I told her I would have to get back to her because I have yet to get a Christmas schedule with my ex. Now, at the end of November, my youngest had been a little bit rude with her, so my sister told me to tell my daughter that if she acted out while we were there, then she would put her in a room by herself. I then had to tell my sister, look, first off, I never said I could go, and secondly, if you're going to threaten my daughter be put in a room by herself, then I'd rather just not go at all. My sister told me I have to go because my niece is excited to show her aunt her new apartment and she will be heartbroken if I don't go. She added at the end by saying, but don't tell her I said that because she'll be embarrassed. So in other words, don't mention it to my niece because she just made that up to guilt trip me into going. After that, I felt obligated to go. I know I could have said no, but I did want to see my nieces and nephews. At the beginning of December, she asked to borrow $20 for food and then spent $50, with her saying that she could pay me back later in the month. Well, last week she told me that she'll just use the $50 that she owes me to help pay for the Christmas dinner. So now I'm expected to pay for part of the dinner. I wasn't too upset because I figured I would buy something, but I definitely couldn't spend $50 just on dinner. I needed that money back for my bills. Fast forward to yesterday and we're on our way to gas up and then leave town. I told her that I planned on throwing in about $10 to help with gas. I know it's not much, but I'm on a budget and none of this was planned. We get to the gas station and she tells me she actually needs me to put more money in on the gas because she only has $10. So I had to put $25 in on her gas tank, and at that moment, I realized why I was invited. She needed money to fund this one-night getaway. We get to my niece's house and she starts making the grocery list, and we had to add a small lunch to the list because we hadn't eaten yet. I told her that my oldest needed something soft to eat because she just had dental work done, and I told her exactly what to get her and she could use the money she owed me to pick it up. Well, she took my oldest to the store with her, and when they got back, my oldest came up to me and quietly asked if she could talk to me. We go outside and she tells me that my sister told her she's getting what she wants, and my daughter will just have to deal with it. Then my daughter tells me that my sister didn't get a receipt and she spent all of the money that she had. Before she left the store, I told my sister I wanted a receipt so I knew how much I was spending and on what. So I went inside and I went up to my sister to ask for the receipt and the rest of the money that she owed me. Well, she had neither, which I already knew. So I had to ask for clarity. Okay, so I'm the one who paid for all the dinner? She says to me, I told you yesterday morning that I didn't have much money. My daughter has to pay for the gas to get us back home. And she said it as if I needed to be grateful that we would have gas to get back home. I mean, she still had over half a tank. This morning at the gas station, she handed me a $50 to go pay $20 for gas and said I could get my kids donuts. Then in the car, she made a snide remark that she was nice enough to buy them donuts and they needed to be nicer to her. Now, somehow I didn't snap at her, but Lord knows I wanted to really badly. I have to ghost her for a couple of days before I can even approach this issue, because if I don't, I'll get pretty mean and I don't want to be the jerk. If I'm a jerk in any kind of way, she'll run to family members and twist the whole story around to make her look like a victim just like she's done in the past. This behavior of hers is literally the main reason I am no longer close with most of the extended family, because honestly, I simply can't take it any longer. That is really disappointing that your sister decided to do that. Like, she only wanted you to come along so you would pay for stuff. She just wanted you for your money, and that's awful. But I think it's really good that you see the red flags with your sister, because this kind of behavior is so inappropriate. Like, it completely just destroys any confidence you might have in her when it comes to literally anything, because you never know if she's trying to play some angle just to get more money. And hopefully in the future you can just say no and stop it right then and there, because otherwise clearly your sister's probably going to string you along and make you pay for more stuff that you don't want to buy. My boyfriend really wants me to convert to his religion and has even stated that we would never get married or have any children unless I join the religion that he belongs to. So now I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 5 months now. He is my first boyfriend and our relationship relationship is almost perfect. We have a ton in common, we enjoy the same hobbies, he's kind and generous and super affectionate, and I am so incredibly happy with him. The one and only problem in our relationship is religion. He is very devoutly Christian, and I'm agnostic. We actually discovered this about each other on our first date when religion happened to come up. He jokingly offered to convert me and ended up going on a long tangent about religion. In hindsight, maybe this should have been a red flag, but I was so excited to finally be dating someone who was so nice and easy to talk to. And I don't mind dating someone who's religious as long as they respect that I'm agnostic. I've always made sure to be very respectful of his beliefs, and he seemed to be accepting enough of mine, though he made it very clear he doesn't agree with them. After dating for a few weeks, I wanted to make us official. When I told him this, he was suddenly extremely hesitant. He then finally confessed that while he could be my boyfriend, he stated that we could never get married and we could never have kids. And this is all because he's a Christian and I'm not. He still wanted us to keep dating, but he just would never marry me. And I was heartbroken when I heard that. For me personally, dating is how I find my future spouse. I mean, I don't casually date. So this was really upsetting to hear. But I really liked him and I cared about him, so we kept dating anyways. I just couldn't bring myself to end the relationship. As time went on, I started to notice him saying things like, "Oh, we should live in a house like that someday," while also discussing how we would teach our kids things, while also mentioning other things about living together and having kids, not actually making plans or anything, but just offhand comments every once in a while. This gave me hope that he had changed his mind and could now see a future with me despite our different religions. So about 2 weeks ago, I asked if he had changed his mind, and after more hesitation, he told me that no, he has not changed his mind. He still can't see himself marrying a non-Christian, and he said he was making those comments because he assumed he would be able to convert me someday. Even though I tried to compromise with him, he simply wouldn't budge. I even offered to go to church with him and allowed him to raise our hypothetical kids Christian as long as I can still be agnostic. He also made it clear that he doesn't understand what it means to be agnostic, questioning how I can be a good and moral person if I don't have a religion to base those morals on. I started to get really frustrated and it turned into a fight. He ended up telling me that he loves me, and I panicked and I was desperate to keep him, so I agreed to think about converting, and he was overjoyed. Well, since then, I've been incredibly stressed. I've tried to read the Bible, I've tried to get into religion, but I just can't do it. It doesn't feel right to me. I realize that I can never give up being agnostic, but I don't want to lose the person I love. He said we should just keep dating, and I agreed because breaking up is unthinkable to me. And since then, we haven't talked about religion at all. I know we've only been together for 5 months, but I truly am in love with him, and I want us to be able to get married someday if that is in the cards for us. I've learned from reading online that interfaith relationships can work, and I want more than anything for us to work out as well. So can I convince him to accept me despite our different religions? What should I do? I can definitely see the dilemma that the original poster's going through, especially with the fact that the boyfriend is just unmoving on going any further than just dating. First of all, I just want to say, in my opinion, you don't need a religion to have any kind of morals in your life. That statement from the boyfriend is just completely untrue, because I know plenty of people who are atheist or agnostic who are wonderful people, and they've never had any kind of religion in their life, or they actively avoid it. So that part of what he said is completely wrong in my opinion, and honestly, it's kind of rude if you think about it. But if the original poster really does date with a hope of saying, "Hey, I'm trying to find my future spouse here," or something along those lines, then honestly, it kind of makes me question why they would even stick around in this relationship. And I say that because it really seems like the boyfriend has made up his mind. They won't have any kids together and they will never get married. And from the sounds of it, it really seems like these are things that the original poster really does want in their life. So it makes me question why you're still dating this guy in the first place. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying break up with him or anything like that. I mean, maybe there is a future where he changes his mind and he's willing to get married and all that good stuff and it all works out. Because other people have made this kind of situation work, and I'm sure that you two could figure it out. But as of what we know, it kind of doesn't seem like this is a good fit at all. And it doesn't seem like you're the roadblock when it comes to getting things moving. You've been willing someone who's agnostic and doesn't believe in the Christian faith to literally go to church and spend time with this guy in his faith and allow him to teach his future children how to be Christian and everything that would go along with that. You're completely on board and you're totally cool with that. But if he's never gonna get married with you and he's never gonna have kids or anything like that, I really question how long this relationship is gonna work out, despite the fact that it seems like the two of you really like each other, which makes this all the more tragic. In fact, the original poster actually went on to say in the comments section that they just can't get themselves to believe in God no matter how hard they try. And it really does sound like they've done a lot of studying and a lot of thinking about this to try and understand this religion. So on that end, it really is nice to see that the original poster is at least open-minded to try and figure out what he believes, despite the fact that they don't believe it themselves. So hopefully, for the sake of the original poster, there's some future where this works out in some kind of way, because from the sounds of it, it really does sound like you care about this guy a lot, and it really would be a shame for this to be the hang-up that stops the two of you from getting married. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.